Welcome back to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And in this episode, we interview a friend of mine, Jordan Eiler, who is a different kind of banker. And he got into gold and silver sales and investing. And this episode's all about what is value? How do you define value? Where does something derive its value from? And we tie it back to the natural side of things.
Yeah, so this is the last episode that we'll post that Isaac recorded about a year ago. So it's just him and Jordan. I just listened to this interview for the first time and it was such a great conversation. Lots of topics covered, but that really is the core theme, is like what really defines value and what is true value, because, you know, as you'll hear, they'll talk about sort of the monetary system and, you know, they touch on cryptocurrency and then the value of gold and silver. But really, what are all of those things really exchanging for, which is the true value? So, and I love what you bring it back to at the end. So stick around right to the end, guys. It's really worth listening to, and we hope you enjoy it.
So before we get into the episode, again, this is brought to you by Natural Art Form. It's a business that Alexa and I run together, and we concern ourselves with the making of high quality natural replacements for products that are more synthetic, that you might already be using. Things like deodorant, sunburn relief, pain relief cream, and you can check out all of our offerings at naturalartform.com. And for listeners of this show, we'd like to extend a discount code that I just made up on the spot. Type in NaturalAF10 for 10% off your first order at naturalartform.com. And let's get into the episode.
Enjoy, guys.
So welcome, is it Jordan Eiler? Is that how you say it?
It's Eiler. Yep.
Eiler, to the Natural AF podcast. So
Thank you.
This show, like, I'm kind of getting ready to relaunch it. I'm stacking some episodes so that I can kind of like start again, get more consistent with it. But like this episode came up for me because recently I had a discussion with a few people about Bitcoin and value. And to me, it's like obvious because I listen to Owen Benjamin a lot. I know you probably listen to him a lot. And like, you know, we've heard a lot of the arguments for Bitcoin, and I used to do crypto trading, and I do a little bit of stock stuff, toy around with it. I'm not like a serious investor with that, but for a long time, like I've really been interested in value, like what defines the value of something versus like an illusory value, like tangible value. So the point that I was making about the Bitcoin was, it's like an illusion, and then your stuff popped up on the feed, like where I sent you some of the Natural Art Form, the leg day stuff that I make. Yeah. And then you're actually trading me some silver for it, which I think is like my new favorite thing to do. Like do trade.
I love it. Yeah.
And so I was like, man, I want to bring you on just because it's such a fitting time for me, like, you know, going after the Natural AF side of finance. You know, it's like I want to get down to the nitty gritty. But before we get started on all the ins and outs of it, I kind of want to give you an opportunity to share sort of how you got into gold and silver for yourself, and then how that led to like the business for your family.
Okay. Yeah, no, well, first of all, thanks for having me on here. Hopefully there's a couple brain cells rattling around that will make some coherent sentences and everything. But I would say generationally, right? I'm a banker of a pretty long line of bankers. So it's been pretty much finance and military in my family for centuries. So that's pretty interesting as I look back on it. I would say what sort of got us in is, you know, sort of seeing a lot of stuff in the last few years. But really my career for the last 20 has been in wealth management and private banking. So, you know, that's dealing with sort of the wealthiest people in in the US that I have been helping, the way in which they go about managing their wealth, not necessarily just their money, but control of their assets is very different than kind of the way that we're all taught. Put money in your 401k, get an IRA. You can maybe start your own business. That's not really the American dream. The American dream is to load up and get a mortgage and buy a big house and, go to the city downtown and have a job there, have a briefcase and all that fun stuff. What I started to see in the last, 15, 20 years really has been how people how families control assets. And that really led us to kind of getting into metals themselves, business, ourselves, having more control over just choice and decision making, control in essence, at least having thought and intentionality behind what it is that we plan to do. And then, stewardship is a big thing for us in the family. As a faithful family, my role is for us to be, I'm responsible. I'm accountable for my thoughts and my actions and with what's been given to me. Right. So much is required because I've been given a lot. I have the bandwidth to sort of be thoughtful and critically analyze what we have or what we have access to, and then what may be most beneficial to those around me. So my family and community and everything else. Seeing families, that I would help manage their assets, they would typically own items or, large sets of items in entities that didn't die. That's something that's different for me, right? Then if I'm growing up and I own my house and I own, whatever it is, when I die, big government wants a cut of that pie, versus they have these entities that would pay them during their life. But when they died, the entity doesn't die. So they have a trust, they have some sort of organization that doesn't have any sort of death blow and has to be crushed. It's just stewardship and then stewardship and then stewardship throughout the generations. So the roles that the people would play in sort of bringing up these new generations really would just to educate them, to provide them knowledge base with how to be a steward of what it is that they have been given. So like times of old where the real wealthy people would be the landowners, the parents and the grandparents would be the ones teaching the kids about what it is to be a landowner, what it is to, sort of have the have the people who are helping to sort of work and keep the land, upkeep of the homes and all that stuff. That's why you've got properties that are 1,000 years old. That's not something that, especially here in California, something that's old here is maybe 100 years old, maybe. And even that, largely the stuff that's 50 or 75 years old, they just continue to tear down and it's planned obsolescence, as it's called. So as much as you can just keep turning over more bucks, what you're doing is you just keep taking from everyone. So similarly, when you look at that old school family who are the caretakers, they're also not having their kids mortgage up to buy a new house. They're not having their kids buy new silverware, a new this, a new that. They're just taking over the assets that were already given to them. And then the individuals who are in charge in that time, they can also be accumulating assets while they are alive, which is what they typically do. And those assets that can survive. And a lot of that stuff over time were things that were tangible. They're physical assets that they could control. So land, right? Opportunities for, mineral and water rights and all that, as well as physical items like, gold and silver, certain materials, just having the rights to all that stuff. We looked at buying land in the last few years, and anything out west, you could buy the land, but you couldn't find anything with mineral rights,
No.
which is pretty amazing because, for those families who are really in control, and those entities and organizations, they hold all the mineral rights. So anything that you're digging up, you don't have a right to, even if you set foot and you're on that property for 70, 80 years, because those rights have been transferred over and over and over for generations. And those are the types of things where, that old school landowner, so to speak, that control that doesn't die is where the wealth is. The wealth is where there's control, and they have, things that are sure of value at the time. That could be gold or silver. It could be beads. It could be turquoise, beaver pelts, whatever, whatever certain economies will trade in. But the main stuff that always has value is something that you can physically touch and you can live on. You can potentially, barter for edible items and or things for sure for life, for food and water and shelter and all that stuff. So we got into all that, just sort of looking at history, and looking at kind of the way in which I manage, sort of relationships at the banks. It's not really managing just their cash, because largely, a lot of these wealthy families, the bulk of their wealth is not in cash. It's not in investments, in the stock market. It's not in any of that stuff. Primarily, it's big real estate, significant, organizations or companies that have ideas that they rent out, so to speak, right? And people will just continue to buy them, and subscriptions are their favorite thing because, people are just renting ideas. Someone else owns it. They're being paid for the rights to, potentially use that thing. Other than that, that's it. There is nothing else. So, we saw all that in the last number of years. We actually were my wife is a big early adopter of lots of stuff, tech and crypto and lots of stuff like that. She's been in tech since, if you remember the Matthew Broderick movie War Games.
Yeah.
She used to have dial up like that, like having a handset receiver, right? All that. So we had crypto way early on, we had all that stuff early on. And I think in 2019, 2020, she came to me and said, look, I have a moral problem with crypto, not just a sort of it's out there in the ether, or it's not something I can sort of touch, because that argument can also be had about a 401k or an IRA. You can't touch that stuff technically. But it was look, here's what I see, her comments to me were, here's what I see in terms of control, right? All this stuff is about control, and in a way, this is another way to provide some sort of a tag, or this is an avenue in which someone is building something, for the freedom of, but really there are backdoors and there's ways in which to kind of control people through this thing.
Yeah.
And I know, you and I have talked about that one, and Benjamin talked about that one the last couple of days, about still having dependency on something, right? You still have to depend on kind of a way in which to trade it, from power and electricity and online sources and phone and all that.
Yeah.
To an economy of scale, and at least of another person who says this is something of value, right? In order for you to have something of value, I think we can look up those definitions, but typically you need to have two parties who say it's worth something, right? So like if you and I are trading your product for silver, we'd have to come to an agreement to say we think this is worth X,
Right.
and so much of that stuff right now is so highly manipulated. It's pretty crazy. But I think just seeing from the timeline, my employment, and then talking about kind of a control moral issue with crypto, for us to say, okay, we need to be in physical items and away from, kind of the other control mechanisms that are out there from the powers that be, for us to remove ourselves from that one and hold something that's tangible. And then, from my wife's background, my wife comes from an Armenian background. Her family came from places like Syria and all that. So, back in the early 1900s, they were being killed, right? And a lot of the family would sew items of value like gold and silver into their garments,
Yeah.
because they didn't have any other way of transport, and they certainly didn't want to just have the stuff jingling in their pocket for them to be a target.
Yeah. My
So,
family came over
that,
with things stuffed up in the prison pocket. No, I'm just kidding.
yep, yeah.
We do things
Well, hey,
differently
man,
in Mexico.
you know what? It's pretty funny when it comes to life and death, what people have a willingness to do, right? And it's funny because I say funny, in a lot of the comfort in which we live, we have no idea what that's like.
Yeah.
Not even remotely close. So when we relay to the kids, that this is not the norm. The norm is dirt floor, and the norm is you're fighting to be fed, and you're fighting for water and control of all those things. Here, where it's piped in, and you got your cozy AC and all that great stuff, this is not the norm. In most civilizations ever. So understand it for what it is. But yeah, it was just coming to the realization about, I use that control word a lot, but really more importantly for our family, we use two words a lot: thoughtful and intentional. So we want to be thoughtful and intentional with our thought life, with our actions, with our words. All that stuff has meaning in what it is that we do. Not so much anymore for other people out there. People can lie all day long. But we got into it from, sort of looking at the morality of it, looking at what it is that we could be doing for our generation and the next. And then, our sort of stake in the ground totem was selling out of crypto, buying silver.
Yeah, I don't hear you.
Is it getting better?
There we go.
There we go. Sorry,
Yeah,
user error. I have the phone on a charger, and it'll just cook this thing until it gets hot, and then it'll just shut down.
Oh, gotcha.
So, anyways, we were talking about kind of the control piece, being thoughtful and intentional. The big stuff, sort of through that moral piece was us selling out of crypto. Our stake in the ground totem was sort of selling out, buying silver, realizing that it was a pretty significant premium, and that there's a big shotgun blast of pricing all over the place. So that took me down the rabbit hole of finding better pricing, what that looked like, what the grift was. Everyone was just on the take.
Pricing around gold and silver, or
yeah. So we originally, when we sold crypto, we bought just all silver first. That was our first foray. We bought a bunch of silver eagles, and on a big online website. And then we didn't have that silver for 90 days, for 3 months, right? So I already had paid them thousands of dollars for the silver that I didn't have any access to. So now I'm out cash. I have no physical. If they want to shut stuff down, and at the time, I think that was pretty close to kind of the whole Canadian debacle, and, they're closing down bank accounts and all that stuff. It became a lot more real. And I'm in a bank. Certainly, people are capable of, at certain authority levels, to click a button and you have no more debit card use, right? You can freeze people's accounts. You can, all that stuff is real. So, that meant, okay, what am I doing from a planning perspective, as a true fiduciary for my family, as a steward for my family? And I realized that I had abdicated my responsibility. I had sort of taken off the crown for that job, even though that's what I do, right? And sort of given it to, I'm going to put this money in savings because whatever. What's it going to do? It's going to go nowhere. Well, not necessarily true, right? Aside from inflation and whatever else they can do to destroy the value of that currency, it was just sort of sitting there and not being worked. So that was another, sort of test for us to say, okay, what am I actively doing with this thing? Because again, I'm accountable for that. And if I'm going to, read scripture about the parables, am I returning anything on this? Am I just basically burying this thing in a hole in the ground? Almost. It's almost like that. So then, we sort of made a point, my wife and I, to have silver made with sort of our own logo and just have that as a thing for the family to say, look, to our kids, this is something that you need to hand down to the next generation. This is something of value that we want to have for you as a reminder. And then for them, this is for you to teach them. So in some small way, with what little we had, it was a way in which, similar to those landowners, we can say, hey, this is something of ours of value that will not die and should hopefully teach the lesson of something that can be and has been of value for every civilization, on the planet.
Yeah.
If so, and you keep that reminder, cool. Also, this stamp is sort of like our family signet ring, right? We don't use those rings anymore to seal letters with wax, but the idea was that, hey, this is something for you to understand. For us, this is sort of a turning point in where we need to go. And previous generations before us, who knows? But I was never handed down anything.
Yeah.
Now going forward, it's my responsibility. This is what we need to do. And that turned into just down rabbit holes of saving and comparing kind of to, other things that are out there, from the market to the crypto to other, commodities are like purses and Rolexes. You can turn that stuff over, and a ton of that stuff had massive gains in that 2020 kind of time frame. People are just turning stuff over, and there were a lot of interesting sort of historical sort of high watermarks for us in that time also. So speaking of Rolex, 25, 30 years ago, I remember reading an article in like a Time magazine, and there was a journalist who was talking about how he had been in Beirut and he'd been in all these sort of war-torn countries, and he always wore a Rolex because wherever he was going, if he ever got stopped and he needed to get out and it was life or death, he could just give him that watch.
Yeah.
And there was value in that thing. And so I think somewhere that stuck in my brain, not necessarily to get a Rolex, but just to understand, if you don't know, language, there are certain things that sort of permeate within the cultures that are items of value that people could turn over should they need to. And then, I just went down the rabbit hole.
What do you think that is? Like you can't escape that fact. Like,
yeah,
I'm from the military. I was brought up, trained with a bunch of special operations guys, and they told us the same stories. Like the earlier Green Berets, they would give them a Rolex, a gold Rolex.
Yeah.
So you got twofer. You got a Rolex and it's made out of gold, and they would use it for the same thing. When you're in a pinch in any country, in any language, a gold Rolex or gold of any kind can help you get out of a bad spot. But like, I was wondering, what do you think? Oh, I muted myself. What do you think is the reason for gold and silver holding their value through generations like it does?
I mean, it's a good question. Historically, it's been used in a lot of different purpose, from commercial use, like today, more than ever, like electric cars, they use tons of silver, tons of minerals. Gold has had conductivity, forever. People use that. One of the most expensive cars that was ever made early on, the McLaren, that F1, they had it like with gold sheet lining on the inside in the engine because of its sort of conductivity purposes and heat and all that stuff. I think one, it's a precious item that is rarely found for one. For two, I think the look of it, right? It's kind of a, gold in the hand or silver in the hand is a very different thing. It's one of those ineffables, right? There aren't words really to explain it, but once you experience it, And I'm not trying to rub my hands together and have the maniacal laugh, but I am saying there is something when you hold an item of value where you react differently. So some of those metals, and I know a lot of other pieces, like, from heat points to, workability with whatever else, to health benefits, right? People put silver coins in their water bottles and antimicrobial, properties and stuff like that as well. So it's interesting to see over time the uses of, but that have stayed the same. They've stayed throughout, right? From coinage and all that. And some of those tokens, especially in the military and in kind of items of value, those have been throughout as, enticing features, because a lot of times, old mercenaries would be hired for the highest dollar or the shiniest thing. It's funny because we're looking at kind of historical reenactment stuff in the Elizabethan period, and of that time, I'm doing a fair amount of historical research on the Germanic, the Landsknechts. They were like mercenaries, but there was a group of them that were, and I don't remember the German word for it, but they were basically called double pay. They were paid double because they were absolutely in the worst, they were in the front line, near the pikes, basically. And then that's when rifles were invented. So you're in the front where charging cavalry is, and the opposing side has rifles. You're getting paid double because you're for sure fodder. And if you survive, great. Odds are low. So of course that government's going to say, sure, I'll pay you double. Your life expectancy is half, a third of anybody else's. But the guys like that, they would wear shiny, silks and gold fibers and, all that stuff to hopefully also, one, show, that they're alive and they're to be reckoned with, but two, it was a way in which to get hired. So it's been interesting to see how there's been big money at play with war is a big one, but the control over those metals specifically, even in biblical times, talking about what it's been used for and why people value it, which is interesting, and they've been a constant source for forever. I think limited and from the earth, and once you have some, I'm not going to go the rub hands route, but I'll go the Lord of the Rings sort of Hobbit Smaug route, right? That once someone has a little bit of gold or a little bit of silver, there's some interesting element to what people do, and they just want to hoard more of it. There's something that's sort of magnetic in it. I'm not a big sort of hocus pocus kind of guy in it, but it does sound different. It does have different weight and feel. And for people, a variety of, every single background, there is something, there's a want to say, okay, that thing has value. What it is, though, is, kind of up for debate, whether it's worth chickens or eggs or whatever. But yeah, that has been an interesting one to see where real money is and real value for things, and where it was used. I mean, a lot of the stuff historically, for some of those nations, they didn't allow the people to have the gold. The kings, and they would keep the gold, but the silver would go out, or brass or copper or something would go out in circulation. Yeah. So pretty interesting.
What do you think about the like on the esoteric side, the energy side, because it kind of connects, like even just like in the practical application of putting it in an engine or using it as connectors in like cell phones and all that stuff. There's an energy component to it. But I was thinking of it because I saw on your Instagram, there's a silver crown. I don't know how big it is, the actual crown, but I've heard people discuss that, where the king would have a golden crown, and you think about electricity and thoughts and all that stuff, all all the hocus pocus. I wonder about that. Like, is there something to that where the king would have that, I don't know, on his head if it would do something? I don't know. No idea.
Well, no, I mean, for a lot of those, from what I remember, historically, a lot of the times those kings, most of the people, they assumed them to be God ordained, right? So they would be sort of the closest to divinity in leading the people, right? Otherwise, the people would say that person wouldn't be in power. So a lot of times from what I can remember, that people would gather an understanding of seeing gold on the head similar to an aura, right? Or, like the light sort of shine, as you've seen pictures of, like, Jesus and Mary and all that stuff. And they'll have kind of the halos and the like. It's a pretty bad comparison, right? If you were to really compare the two, from sunshine to just the metal itself. But I think it's the closest sort of physical reminder for something that looks the part, right? It looks like something of value for one. It does sort of give, the impression of it's significant in some way. Although biblically it's funny because, if you think about it, gold is used as a tool for, like roads, stuff that you would sort of trample on, right? It's not something that you should idolize, but it is something where you say people would give pause to it when they see gold or they see silver. Most people don't, know the value of it from a day-to-day perspective. If you did offer someone a bar of gold, most people would say yes. They have no idea what that value might be. It is funny though, nowadays, when you do talk to someone about having gold, and you show them what their money can buy in terms of gold, they're almost always disappointed.
Oh yeah.
They always think that it's going to be some larger pile of something. And then you say, oh no, this iPhone sized piece of gold is 60 grand. And they go, really? That's just that? I was hoping it'd be, Scrooge McDuck and I'm diving into the vat of coins and all that stuff.
You ever go into your vault and just like pick up handfuls of it just to see what
Yeah, me and the dragon. We're in there. You could have, just those 1 ounce coins. I'm trying to think, a 1 ounce coin of gold is a couple $1,000s, right? And if you think about that for what you have in practical purposes for the rest of us, think of a $50, right? Think of like a 50-cent piece. That's something that's worth a couple $1,000s or so in 1 ounce increment. Now, if you were to have bars or anything, if you've ever seen pictures of any of that stuff, it's pretty crazy to think of from that standpoint, the amount of what that might be worth. And then also if you compare that to dollars or, any paper currency, you can't really compete. Now you can't eat it, right? So, and you can't go down to the market and shave off, I guess you could shave off a couple $100 worth. Since, no one goes to markets anymore with scales like they used to and weigh out and clip off and, cut the amounts that you need. So, all that stuff too, just like the Whole Foods and the cities, those have also fallen to convenience. So, as people continue to find value in these items that have been around for thousands of years, the grabble in that one is that people, these mints and places that will deliver coins and whatever else will charge more and more money for convenience. So if you want a smaller increment, if you want $50 worth or $100 worth, or all the ways in which we've been conditioned to use cash, 1s and 5s and 10s and 20s and 50s and 100s, all that stuff now is there in increments in silver and gold. And there's a huge market there also. It is sad though, if you were to really look at it, because $2 now is the same as an old dime would be. So 90% silver dime. The reality is, excuse me, that's your buying power for what a dollar is worth anymore. And most people won't understand that one unless you look historically. But, if you look in the last 100 years, that your dollar has lost 90% of its value. Most people, if they were educated and knowledgeable, there probably would be fires in the streets for the right reasons versus I just want to get some, extra nicotine gum from Target for free, or whatever, or some menthols.
That's what's so critical about this whole thing. It's like I look at, because for me, like just recently, the topic came up with crypto, where I'm just like I'm seeing crypto being talked about like it's valuable, and even U.S. dollars. I've back in the day, I was listening to Robert. If you're familiar with Robert Kiyosaki, and he's talked to a lot of people about this, about value of gold and silver, and what started with him in the Marine Corps, secretly flying a helicopter to a gold mine, trying to do like a under the table deal with a gold mine operator, and like while in Vietnam and stuff. But like, but the dollar, and then the gold is like more like it's closer to the foundation of what's valuable. But even gold itself, like you said, you can't eat it. But they would use it, right? What would they use gold for? They would pay warriors with skills to fight and defend, buy food with it that would take skill to grow and like all of that. So it's getting
a tool.
What's actually valuable. And the people that that I was discussing Bitcoin with were just focused on, it's going to go up in value. I'm going to leave some to my kids. It's like, it's not bad in and of itself, but it's going the opposite direction that I think people are going to need to rely on.
Yeah.
If they get their way, the people that are really the Bitcoin bros, like you'll probably have some insights on this statement that kind of triggered me into thinking like, whoa, like this is going to go off the rails if they get what they want. They're talking about the Fed, ending the Fed, this and that. And when you're asking like, well, what do you do then? They're like, well, Bitcoin. Like, how shit could it go if you tried to actually replace the Federal Reserve Bank system with something like Bitcoin?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I have yet to, buy the Snoop Dogg NFT or whatever it is, but I doubt anyone's going to trade me for a loaf of bread, right? When push comes to shove. So, with that stuff, it's two parts, right? I think there's a positive to it in terms of the tech, right? In terms of the blockchain technology, right? And we've heard this before, and it was just discussed this week. That technology, I think, is good from entity to entity. If it's business organization and they want to have some sort of additional security measures around how they're moving money to each other, great. I don't have a problem with that one. I think the problem becomes when you digitize so much and you lack control so much because of convenience factor, where people can then control what it is that you're able to do at their convenience, right? So, we talk about if you you want to go way off the rails with social credit scores and all that stuff, we can do that. But I think if we think basically control, right? To keep using this word. If you have an item in your possession, you can potentially control that item. You have coin, you have you have a rifle, you have rocks, sticks, whatever it is that is in your possession until someone potentially tries to take it out of your possession. It's yours. You can trade for it. You can, tell someone of its usefulness, or they might know and they want to trade for that thing or buy it from you. So that makes sense to me. If you have a thing where there are only a certain section of people who find value in that thing because, hey, to the moon, okay, you can do that with baseball cards. You could do that with watches. You could do that with lots of stuff. But Bitcoin is, I think a lot of it has been a test of, what people have a willingness to do, who are the people who want to kind of go rogue and go away from the Fed system. So they're sort of self-identifying, which can also be, dangerous to those if you are opposed politically or philosophically. That can be an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And then if you think just beyond the tech and the control and the whatever, how can you eat it? You can't eat it. All right, well then what can I do? And so you sort of fall back on how useful is this thing as a tool, and it doesn't have a whole lot of usefulness, right? In any other way other than there's a select group of people that, hey, it has value and it's separated and blah blah blah. Is it really though? If you were to go into it, what are the safety measures? What happens if you lose it? Oopsies. What are the ways in which you can control, or have access to some of that stuff? I know other than Kiyosaki, Catherine Austin Fitz, if you've ever heard some of her conversations around crypto and control of dollars and currencies and kind of all that stuff. She's a great one to listen to. She sort of speaks to and has published a lot of stuff around currencies and the world markets, and sort of world order and all that. So, you can take it, whole in, or you can parse out pieces that you want, but there's a lot of information in there too. And I think even silly enough, if we look at some of the stuff that Hollywood has made over the years, the James Bond films and the whatever else, all this stuff gets boiled back down to, some of the recent James Bond film was around power over water. Who had access to the water supply, right? Batman did the same thing. There's all these things that are out there that are designed to, be over the top and be, whatever it is. But if you really are to look in reality with regard to the basic essentials that we need from, sort of food, water, shelter, look at who controls that stuff. And if I'm a steward, if I'm, doing what I should be as an individual or for my family, the what happens if, and just again, being thoughtful, critically thinking about it. Hey, understand what it is, understand where I'm at in terms of convenience, understand what I may have to trade for that convenience. If that's gold or silver, or if that's my time in working for big corporate structure because I want to live in a big city and have all these conveniences. Just, be aware, right? Be aware, be thoughtful with all that stuff. So I think the crypto for us became a little bit more of a moral dilemma around control and then opportunity. And then what does this sort of set us up for? What does that look like? What are we sort of raising our hand and saying to, the government or whatever else? Hey, we don't like you. We oppose X. So I think, looking at all that and then from kind of traceability standpoint and everything else, it became, we're believers, especially in terms of, sort of been given free will. If I want to have a conversation with you and, we want to trade or sell each other something, that's between you and I. As long as we're not harming anyone else, it has no bearing on anyone else in the world. Right. Yeah. So that interaction, I mean, that's an economy, right? So that trade between those two parties, as long as you and I think that each other has something of value, then we can trade those items. So if we were to just boil it down to ourselves individually, and then, for the family from a micro perspective, that's it first, not to be selfish, but that's a number one. And then beyond that, if we can build community in which there are people who may have complementary skill sets or something, things that are just beneficial to us as a family, and we can be, trading for something there, those are the things that we should be doing. And if we can learn, then I want that also from an individual standpoint and for the family, for us to know, basic plumbing, basic electrical, basic, how do you find water, shelter, food, this, that, and the other. What does it look like? Sure, you can go and trade your cash at Costco for your chickens, but we know someone who has a homestead down in San Diego. Let's go process chickens. Does it suck? Yep. Do you appreciate it? Yep. Right.
Yeah.
So once you do have that appreciation and understand it, in my viewpoint, then, we're that much better to make an educated decision around the trade. Hey, I'm going to trade my time for this thing. I'm going to trade my cash for this thing, or I'm going to go down there and I'm going to process these chickens, save a few bucks, but I'm going to do it the hard way. And that's how life is in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to go through that process, because again, I grew up probably as LA as can be, right? My dad basically taught me how to write a check. Anything else was, who knows, right? So,
Right.
my brother went the opposite end of the spectrum. He went into being a skilled mechanic and a technician, and he's been that for years and years, because it was let's take this thing apart and figure it out, because no one else at the food chain is telling me about this. So, that's been really beneficial to me in the last number of years, is getting hands dirty, finding out how things work, and understanding that knowledge is valuable, that it's valuable to the next, the next generation.
Yeah.
And that if I'm not doing that, again, I use, abdicating my throne. I'm like taking my crown off of what my role is, and I'm giving it to someone else. So, I want for us to be capable and thoughtful and intentional with all the things. Gold and silver, yes. But, beyond that, for the family to be capable where, hey, the lights turned off, or this happens or that happens. Okay, well, you're capable of finding water. You're capable of building shelter, or you're capable of looking at sort of what we have in, flora and fauna around, and saying, okay, well, that's poisonous. That can, that's edible. That's whatever. All that stuff used to be normal run of the mill knowledge, years and years ago, and is lost because, we love air conditioning and water beds and, stupid crap, and we get soft.
Does anybody really love waterbeds though? Like,
maybe that one was a stretch. I tried to
I never had one.
I did. I'm that old. I remember getting one, and as a kid, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna 100% puncture this thing, and it's gonna be all my fault. But the water slide will be epic. So fortunately, that never happened. But yeah,
that is kind of it's like sleeping on the ocean. I can see the value. Talk about value. Dude, I wanted to go back to what we were talking about earlier with trusts and like stewardship and generations. Just that idea, I'm sure, like talking to people that are into cryptocurrency, I can come across as like just flippant and like I don't know everything that they know about it, and that's true. Like it's a very technical, involved thing, but the thing that's that lasts, is what you're going to leave behind to generations, and preserving not just what like how do you define value, what that is, but the ideas, the way that you view money itself. Like I looked at, like if you're leaving Bitcoin behind, are you leaving behind your skills as an investor to trade it and not lose whatever value that you would trade it for, which would be, I guess, US dollars or whatever?
Yeah.
Are you even thinking in that direction? Because everyone that I've seen, that I've looked up to as far as gold, silver conscious people, they have this, like, I don't know if it's chicken or the egg. I don't know if thinking about gold and silver makes you think more about legacy, or if you're legacy minded, you'll be drawn to those things that are tangible. But the thing that I'm trying to get better at, like I've held value. I can. It's like Owen talks about a little bit with people from like the jungle regions where they kind of like fruit grows on trees and they just kind of like don't plan ahead for the future and they go by their gut all the time. Like I have a lot of that instinct in me, and I'm from Wyoming. I should have like the, the mountain ape, think long term because it's going to be frozen for a long time. But when it comes to money, I'm just like, oh, I'll just make more.
Yeah.
I've done investing. I've been successful with one real estate deal that I did that I held and cash flowed for a while and then cashed out. But now I'm feeling the slinky. Now I'm back to like, I don't have that asset. I still have silver. I have skills. I have things of actual value, but as far as something to leave behind that isn't just in my body, which is like my skills. So what would you suggest to people that want to stop that slinky of like, I've got stuff with value and now I'm broke. I'm going to get, this asset and I sell it and then I don't hold on to that value. I spend it or I keep it as like a savings account that I use. Cause I sold it to like, sort of float myself along and start a business and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying? Like that slinky of like I have, and then I'm like out of it and then I can go in and get more. Like, how do you kind of mellow that out so you can just kind of steadily grow and then pass it on to later generations?
Yeah, no, great question. I think there's a couple different things in there that I would sort of pick out. So things that are of value, right? And we're talking about in life skills are of value, and then items, assets are of value, or they're valuable, right? Or that people would assign some value to. So I think the desire to go out and acquire, right? We have from, being, I'll just call myself Big Dub Caveman, is, my needs and wants are pretty simple, from, food, shiny stuff, having a family and breeding. And then let's not get trampled by the dinosaurs or the whatever the thing is. That's pretty much it. But I think the skills that are acquired within there, right, when you're talking about whatever that might be, and some investable asset from real estate or the deal, right, is to understand business and how to go about whatever the trades are and what you're trading, right? And a lot of times we learn the simple stuff. I learned the simple stuff from the kids. They told me a long time ago when they were really small, they said, "Dad, you trade your life for money." That was a little tough, but it's true. It was time and whatever knowledge-based skill set I was trading and giving to someone else, some other entity that wanted to use it, and they were giving me some dollars for whatever that stuff was. So I think understanding the skills that you do have with the knowledge base that you acquire for business purpose, valuable, right? But it's only valuable while you're alive and while you have cognitive ability to provide whatever that skill set is. When you don't have that value, right? Which is why most of the people on more of the nihilistic side and whatever else are like, extra people in the population, launch them, kick them off the cliff. I think that's a thing where you can acquire other items of value, right? The tangible physical stuff that then you can control. You talked about kind of a gut reaction. We have a saying in our family. Our saying is, if there's a question, there's no question. If there's a gut something in there, nope, don't, right? Stop, time out. Yeah. What are the things? Assess what it is that you're going about. I know in Marine Corps or in various sort of places in the military, people talk about like color coding or color warning, right? You're talking about being awake or aware or alert or alarm, any of those items. For us, similarly, most people are probably just physically awake in a lot of ways. And, how aware are they to a lot of the different things? Questionable, right? So it depends on what you choose to consume, right? Not just food, but information and whatever. So I think as we go about thinking about our items of value, our skills while we're able and capable, and then once we have them, not to think of them as fixed pie, because we have that idea or those thoughts that have been passed down to us. We should be freely, whoever will listen to what we have to say, we should be trying to pass that knowledge base down to everyone in tradition or in help of others, in service of other people. Yeah. physical items of value that we acquire and that don't die. That could be a tie into an answer that we were talking about earlier about why there's value in gold and silver, is that the stuff's around forever. It stays around. So as we acquire those things, and to get off of the slinky is for some of us in our generations, actually for a lot of us are having to do the hard work now the generations before us stopped doing. And that might mean, a generation or two ago, we're still on the farm. They were still on, whatever, living kind of week to week or month to month in terms of just feeding themselves and not necessarily acquiring much more, but they had land. And a lot of those people traded all that land in for convenience and access in a lot of the cities. And now they don't have, food or whatever else, because they bought into the lie that convenience was best. And then, you'll eat whatever they give you. Yeah. So I think separating those two, sort of the skill set that we can pass along. And then there are those items that are a little bit more precious. Some of the commodity items, land, gold, silver, whatever, those do have more of a fixed sort of amount, right? There are only so few kind of those resources of what we know. And I don't go into mines and I don't go digging for any of that stuff. But the labor to do that on the chance that you can get something like that, know that that's significant, right? In oil, they call that wildcat drilling. It's just you go out into the field and buy it, and hey, here's hoping.
Yeah.
So I think separating those two, and then to understand that our thoughtfulness and stewardship is, certainly to think and then to budget. So, my idea on that one in terms of budget for buying and or if we ever sell has less to do technically in the markets. I'm not looking to time the market. I'm not looking to, it's got to get to X. It's just, I'm going to acquire, period. I'm going to allot this amount to acquire. If that goes up or that goes down, while in life, just like your skill set that you can pass along, my want to make $5 versus $4 should not be paramount. It is, I'm acquiring and I need to do the hard work because I'm accountable, and that hard work is for the next generation, because my responsibility to God is that this is my role. And if that means I'm acquiring in the efforts that generation after me is the one who benefits from it, then that's the way it is, right? I think there's a proverb around planting a tree in which someone else is going to be living under the shade of. Sure. So it's that understanding what it is, doing the hard work and rolling up our sleeves to say, hey, having the highest Bitcoin and to the moon and all that stuff is, yeah, right now it's going up. Who knows when it will, but historically it hasn't. So our thought process is similarly biblically, there's nothing new under the sun, right? All these things, land and access to our livelihood, water and food and shelter and all that stuff, those are necessities. And I think in a very small way, at least for us personally, in the last few years with sort of the lockdown craziness, people saw what necessities were, right? What were the intangibles? Healthcare, food, water. People were getting haircuts, whatever. But there were these things that did not change. They were inelastic to, whatever the economy was sort of shelling out and doing. And that will continue. So from an investment standpoint, our thoughts were to stay tried and true, like the tortoise and the hare story is just keep doing the right things, right? Be thoughtful and intentional with what it is that we've been given. Hey, have a budget for what that looks like. I think differently than Kiyosaki sort of using debt. We don't. We're trying to just acquire items of value as we can budget. And if we, need to save up for maybe a larger item of value, okay. But really over time, what we can also do with metals specifically is, you can buy stuff as cheap as like $2 for a 90% dime, or, into the thousands of dollars. But, you get your $2 over time and you trade it in for an ounce of silver at 25, $30. Okay. Well, then you accumulate enough of those, and then you can buy your bigger piece of thing, and you can just continue to acquire in real tangible item versus I'm going to buy IBM and hopefully there's good news out there and we'll go to the moon or whatever. Look, I've been in finance for 25 years. I've got 401ks and I've got all that stuff. The way I think about that one is I don't think that is promised to me. It is on paper, it's on a computer screen, and it is out there digitally. Do I have it? Nope. I don't have it in my possession. And frankly, if I ever take some out, the government's going to want to take big old chunks out of that thing too. So, there's a reason in which, these entities, these big corporations offer it, for their own tax benefit and helping their own bottom line. So if I can also budget a way in which I can be part of, kind of the control, be more on my side and be accountable in that way, then that's really where we're trying to go, to not rely on anyone else. And for us to do the hard work and for us to be accountable means some of that physical stuff. And that might mean, getting off the bandwagon of, hey, I can make 25% on this thing. I can make, X% on this thing, turning it over and flipping it and whatever, versus my role here is not to make the big percentages, is to, if I'm not the landowner, if I don't have the things for the kids, I need to acquire at least the information in which to share with them what is valuable. Yeah. And then if I do have the ability to earn, then, okay, I'm going to turn that into other items. And gold and silver is not the only thing in the world, obviously. But it became an item in which I was keenly aware of money because I've been in the industry for so long, and watching these wealthy people who were landowners with significant assets not be in the market and not be, doing anything other than waiting for the world to go on sale again every 10 years or so. And then they acquire tons and tons more for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
And that cycle continues. It's all historical. So, I just said, look, I'm not very bright. I'm Mongo, the caveman, right? So Mongo needs food and water, shelter. And I keep seeing this repeated pattern. Well, what am I going to do about that repeated pattern? Well, we train martial arts. I've got a great friend of mine. And one of the first things he ever said was, what's your main purpose here? Don't get hit, right? Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, duh. But, there's a little bit of that too, right? In as we're talking very basic items, food, water, shelter, self-preservation, if you can see the pattern and you're in the way of the bus, that's your own choice at that point, right? So I think what we wanted to do is we wanted to be, again, thoughtful and intentional with our choices around money and, versus crypto versus cash versus physical versus whatever. And the one that has the longest timeline in history was metal. And has been and is being consumed more now than ever, for us to say, wow, at least this is a store of value. And that's how we look at it. We don't look at it as, this is going to go and pay us, dividends. What will it pay us eventually? If we get double or triple our money in value, we're going to get some piece of paper, an IOU. What our hope is and what our desire is to acquire the knowledge and then to acquire that stuff for value for the generations, for them to understand what value in some of those items are. But before they have the physical, they have to understand the concept. Yeah.
Yeah, I dig that. And that's something I've been interested in uncovering more is like how to preserve the information, not just so that my children learn it from me, but how do you set it up in a way? And this, I don't have the answer for this, but maybe education, books, but how do you guarantee that your great grandchildren will read the books? That's tricky. That's the kind of broader vision that I want to embody more and stay connected to, because if you can solve that problem, now you've got the opportunity to, like you said, like when you're passing on, then generations later, like your children aren't getting mortgages. They're being brought up with a higher level of knowledge about maintaining a larger and larger, whatever it is, chunk of life, business, land
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think that's the tough part. Personally, I think the conversation we have with kids, we try to stay biblically, because my responsibility is between myself and God, right? What they do, and we have this conversation too when we're talking about giving money to first aid or to homeless people or whatever. Look, if I'm called to do something for that entity or that person, that's between me and God. If they do something squirrely with it, that's between them and God, right? Do I want to, if I know of something where I can enable them to do something that would be harmful? Okay, look, I need to take a second thought about what that might be, and maybe it's better that I don't, or have the thought around it. But for us too, foundationally, we're teaching the kids biblically. What they will do will be out of my control, so it won't matter. But until my dying breath, my role is to educate and guide and help and say, hey, see this scar from getting a bat to the head over and over because I didn't get it? Yeah, try to avoid that. And our
whole
desire
life,
is, yeah, that's it. Hey, look, I grew up in a generation of that's what you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
You jumped out of the tree, you broke your arm. That's what you get. You did something stupid. Here you go. The stuff now, I'm going to sound like an old man, but old man rant incoming, why is that tree there? That tree's too high. Someone should cut those limbs down. You're providing a space that's unsafe. Look, get out of here. Plenty of us have those things now, and we learned from it, right? I learned, hey, you know what? I'm taking some significant risk. And the more we remove a lot of those items that can provide us some pretty significant lessons in life, they're going to be that much more dramatic when, you take the rails off, some of the younger kids, and they have no idea what some of those pieces are. And then big devastation happens. So,
it's a fan type thing, dude. If they, I was thinking about this, the Federal Reserve is like the farmer from Animal Farm. You were talking about someone reading 1984 earlier.
Yeah.
And I had this realization recently. I was like, yeah, the Fed is the farmer. If you kill the farmer, and then Bitcoin is like the decentralized power to the people thing. Yep. It's an exact, to me, scenario of, well, what happens to the animals when you kill the farmer? Yep. And then you said when the kids, the generation that grew up not climbing trees and falling out of them, when everything was made safe for them, it's just going to be that much harder for those people that are not hardened from those situations.
It's true. You know what? You're gonna have those scenarios where the kid, wants to chop the tree down, and then oopsies, the tree falls on you, and then life is now over. If you don't have those times, and I'm not advocating, hey, let's go jump off a cliff and figure out how deep the water is, understand what it is you're doing and be thoughtful around, or try to, as much as you can. And with a lot of the people, there's a lot of wisdom, in people in a variety of different ages. It just all depends on a lot of life experience, right? Some people very early on, a lot of guys who've gone into the military and see some pretty horrific stuff. But that can lead to a pretty significant gratefulness in life, right? Having convenience to shoot. I'm sitting in an air conditioned, whatever, trailer, house, something, this is better than being shot at or walking through some place that there's IEDs or a sniper or this or that. Yeah, I don't want any part of that if I can avoid it. But most people won't really understand that, and you certainly can't play your game of GoldenEye or Rainbow Six and go, yeah, I get it now. I'm on for understanding exactly what these people go through. Again, look, for us, we want to learn as much as we can. And I think for all of us, self-preservation dictates typically that we can do so in some of the most convenient form imaginable, right? If I can do so and read and learn and do that without getting, with a lower probability of getting killed, cool. I have a willingness to do that. And I think most of us will want to do that and be able to relay. The hard part comes in when people have to sacrifice some of the tough stuff. And the tougher stuff might be that, hey, we're slogging away and we're making our 2% or our 5% or whatever. That isn't the end result. The end game is that then I understand, the next generation can understand, people around me in the community can understand that they are of value, right? That there's a larger, community at play in what we should be doing in general, just in terms of love and truth, and those are of value. The Rolex and the whatever, that's a passing thing. Yesteryear it was beaver pelts and turquoise, right? So the Bitcoins of the world and all that, not really relevant to understanding, baseline foundational stuff for us is, love of God, love of each other. What can we be doing for other people in service of other people? And then as we're going through this stuff, and you talk about, the slinky or yo-yoing or whatever, is keeping it simple and accumulating for them and doing for them. We don't need to be hoarders, but we can budget, right? We can be thoughtful. We can be intentional. Yes, that might be over time. That might be significant opportunities like real estate investments, and you have some larger piece. But all that stuff requires, in my opinion, intentionality and thought. And for us to critically think about what our roles are and do the hard work in it and be accountable to each other, then regardless of what we say to the kids, they're going to see what we're doing and they're going to see how we're living. And they're going to say, oh, hey, there's a cause and effect. Dad did this, mom did this. This was the result. And they continue to do this thing over and over and over. That is of value. And then this other stuff has, monetary value. It has some whatever value for the time. But the longer term piece, I think, is just that educative process and knowledge base for us and for the generations. I used that control word earlier, and I do it a fair amount, but the one that you can't really control is what the generations will do with it after you give them the knowledge base, right? They'll use it to benefit themselves or cut other people down or out, or they'll, keep it to themselves and they won't want to give it freely and have that sort of fixed pie mentality. And I'm keeping this knowledge base because I don't want to give it to you, when in reality, it's detrimental if you're not, sharing it and being helpful to those around you.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I picked up from other forms of investing and learning, like even real estate, you have your plan A, B, C, all that. You want to protect the downside if you can. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen. I really like my friend Sean Ferguson has a really interesting comedy bit about how to prepare for like worst case scenarios, how to protect your downside.
Yeah.
Let me see. Where did I put his video? Yeah. So let me see if you can actually hear this.
Okay.
I have to unmute him.
That should be fun. I'm excited. Been prepping that. I do troll prepping. Anybody else troll prep? Yeah. A friend of mine asked me, he's like, so is that when you prepare somebody to be a troll? I'm like, no, that's troll grooming. That's something different. I don't do that anymore. Thanks, Disney. No, what I do is I troll through preparation. I don't build a bunker to survive on. I build a bunker that's going to annoy the crap out of the raiders that find it 2 weeks after I die.
That's hilarious.
You open up that hatch, just a waft of patchouli scent comes out. Bales of CBD weed and kegs of non-alcoholic beer stacked to the ceiling. Loaves of bread that are just the collected heels of other loaves of bread. Plenty of water, but it's all seltzer, sparkling, and it's pamplemousse flavored, Everybody's favorite, right? Kirkland signature brand canned goods, wall to wall. That's how we do it there. Best thing ever. And everything's just got a slight layer of spilled soda sticky on it, on every surface we come across. So.
Yeah. Protect
That's
your dad.
awesome.
Well, that's a Scar Bear. He's a local in Fort Collins, Colorado.
No way.
Yeah, he's the one that told Owen about pandas potentially not being real.
No, we'll have to dive into that one for sure.
Yeah,
no, that's funny. I think you talked about kind of the chicken and the egg. So the metals and the whatever else was a part of kind of an overall thought process around. People talk about the prepping or the whatever else. In reality, it's just more of, being thoughtful around convenience and the convenience that we do have. And when the convenience does potentially shut off, and they talk about brownouts or blackouts or whatever, it happens, and it happens in life. And what are you going to do about it? And lots of people have generators and candles and all that stuff. And they don't dare call themselves a prepper,
right?
Because there's some stigma around it. But, for any of us, I think being thoughtful in general around the convenience that we do have is to understand cause and effect. And it's to understand where we live and what that looks like. And that comes from, lessons. It comes from understanding, plumbing, and your toilet gets clogged. Okay, well, how does this connected? Where does this go? What does that look like? What trap and wait, it gets smaller. Hold on. Where is this? And you want to go down, sort of looking at the basics for some of the stuff that we live in. Most people take that stuff for granted. And when you do have the 10 p.m. flood in the house, or the oopsies, there's a fire inside the wall, I smell smoke, and then it becomes a, life or death kind of. And we don't always live in the life or death. But again, if we're going to have those things, which typically we do, there's a lot of failure that happens in general, then it's at least wise for us to understand how something basically operates, shutting off water, shutting off the gas, these little things.
Yeah.
When you're living in spaces like this, just to be prepared, right? And what is funny is that more and more as time goes on, that's becoming kind of a radicalized term, and people want to use it for some specific purpose, to include, and I will lovingly throw some of the special ops guys under the bus and charge people $600 for some cry pants. And I'm like, dude, do you really need that? I mean, it's great. I love the Gucci gear.
Right.
I hear you. Though, for your purposes, Mr. Neighbor who's sitting next to me, maybe you understand like what your water heater does. What are you going to do with that? Whatever, just super basic stuff.
Yeah.
And then, you want to get into having nods and nods and quads and all the fun stuff. Yeah, man, let's go. Let's dive in. But first, let's talk about, some of the main stuff that matters. So yeah, we went from, gold and silver to buying a freeze dryer for food and, kind of camping, creating our own kind of camping food, and then going out on hikes and using tools. And man, this bag sucks. It rubs under my arms, or these boots suck, or these are awesome, or I can live all day in any of this stuff. that's actually doing it and learning in some small way for us and for the kids, a little bit of that falling out of the tree thing of, hey, I don't like my wife got a new rifle in the last few months, and wow, it's loud. We built her an AR-10.
Yeah.
which is lots of fun.
Yeah.
Though the muzzle brake, if you're 5 feet, to the left of her, it's all bad, right? And that's doubled up and outside.
Yeah.
So
that's like a
it's stuff like
7.62 or a 308 caliber.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That's it. So for the longer range stuff, hey, and the higher powered stuff, it's gonna be a little bit more significant, but does it need to be that much? No. So, hey, again, like with the kids, when we teach them anything, this cause and effect stuff and firearms, for instance, we start with things like slingshot, right? And, hey, look, cause and effect, that did damage to that thing. And you could see it travel all the way there. Now imagine you speed the projectile up exponentially and think of the damage that thing is going to do. Okay, well, now understand this tool and what this tool is used for and how we would properly use this tool, right?
Yeah.
And then educate appropriately. So, in that same way, for preparation purposes, we want to be educated as much as we can in all the sort of basic items, for them and us to know what's valuable in life. And it's not always in making an extra $5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. People spend a lot of time getting the cryptocurrency skill down. And I would just say, like, for those people, like, stay grounded. You don't have to stop investing in crypto and buying and all that. But, like, learn some skills, learn how to use your hands, how to fix stuff, how to fight, how to defend yourself, how to use firearms safely, responsibly. And my path was going through the military and doing a lot of this, I did SEER school and survival training and stuff. So I feel really comfortable with like the higher risk. I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? I'm out and I'm eating crickets. Like I can live like that. I don't need any of this. But now I'm kind of also like building it back where I'm like, I want to stay in the house some, like going out and just living in the woods is cool and all, but like, I kind of I like the castles and airships idea. I want to advance. Yeah,
I'm with you. I think, there's great knowledge base in understanding the suck, right? And embracing it. And you go, hey, look, all right, cool, whatever. I can survive, right? And then you get into a little bit of convenience, right? Now you've got a padded air mattress. That's sweet. I can live like this forever, right? And then you have shelter, and then you have, right? And then you add the layers on, and you add the layers of complexity, then it becomes a trade-off. I think this, the crypto stuff, for sure, it's a tool. So I'm not saying run for cover. What I am saying is just understand it for what it is, that it's none of these things are the savior, be all end all. They're not. But utilize the skills that you do have. And if you do have blind spots and you do have community around you that is, that loves you enough to tell you the truth, that you do have a blind spot and can do so, in a helpful, constructive, loving way, and say, hey man, you should probably, do you want to learn this thing? Let's learn this thing together or whatever. That's beneficial and valuable to you and for the generations, to where I think you can have advancement, right? And a lot of this stuff, people just want to bury their head in the sand because they don't want to do the hard things. They don't want to SEER school. No one wants to, be without AC, right? Or whatever, let alone blindfolded and harassed and all that car antennas whipping your junk. Not to say that that's happened, but I'm just saying, it's just thinking through, writing it down, saying it out loud. These are the things that happen in reality. Okay, go out and live it. Go out and milk a cow and grow a plant. And you go, wow, that was harder than I thought, but it's more rewarding. Cool. Did it put a couple bucks in your pocket? No. Okay. But this skill will help me with XYZ 1, 2, 3. Crypto can do that. There's great wisdom in understanding economies of scale and understanding markets and understanding things of value for the time, trading that. I would use that, especially the crypto piece personally, I would use that for trade of something else of value. Hey, you want to go and you want to take that out? Awesome. I've used the same in the stock market, right? So, in the 08 downturn, all the stuff like went to zero. AIG and Bank of America, the stuff was like less than $1. Wow. Well, the second that the governments come out and say these are too big to fail, I bought like as much as I could of some of the biggest institutions in the world that were under $1. Well, that's easy, in my opinion, right? And similar to you, I think, oh, that's little risk, right? If they can't fail, then that you just said they're going to be around in some form or fashion. So when we got out, we were tripled our money, quadrupled our money. How much is enough, right? Rockefeller said a little bit more, right? So, our response was triple is plenty. Getting our money back is awesome, right? Because all of that stuff is a risk. It's all a big gamble and a big crapshoot that I don't control. So, for some of the pieces like cryptos or, the S&P or the real estate market or any of that stuff, if you're in it and using that, you can utilize it as some sort of economic benefit to you and yours. Yeah. But if you also realize that it's not the be all end all, and you're not putting 100% of your time and talents into that thing, then okay, realize what it is and what it can do. Then okay, but otherwise, for you to say it's the thing, that's, again, like a person, maybe bad analogy, but it's like a person timing the end of the world. It's going to be October. Look, I don't know if it's the thing or not. I don't. Currently, it is a thing. Has it been all over the place? Yes. Are you finding you're able to do something for little output and have significant value in an asset taken out? That can't last. Sorry. Right. But historically, that doesn't last. So if I think of it that way and I'm in it for a little while, okay, but I'm also budgeting in that thing, in crypto specifically, for only a small budget that I have a willingness to lose, just like I would gambling at Vegas or in the stock market or whatever else. As much as I love and absolutely idolize the tech, that should be enough of a warning to me to go, hold on. Am I putting too much into this? And as part of my whatever persona, I'm preaching it to everyone and it's my new idol. That should be enough for me to stop and really prioritize and think about why I'm putting money there.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of reminds me of like recently I've gone through so many iterations, like lessons and like deep internal awareness that's been very helpful, but also difficult. So going through like money struggles and like starting a business and it being like really, really slow, a lot slower than I predicted.
Yeah.
But that brought me to, like these internal views about money and like why the anxiety comes the way that it does about it. Mm-hmm. And that it tied in with everything that I learned, in the past with like, just recently with like relationship troubles and stuff like that. And the piece of value that I think to take it to like a spiritual level is, so when I was doing crypto trading, I was learning about the emotional side and like how, like if you start feeling emotions about trading, then probably stop. If you feel super glad that you just made money, then you just pull back. If you feel super bad that it went down, pull back. Yeah. But like on a deeper level of that, it's like you're putting too much weight on the value of this external thing. And we have the external things to provide, to put a roof over our head and all that stuff, but the real value comes from within. And your connection to the creator, I think, is the source of all of that. And so I've told people, and I've learned that myself, it's not about your ego and about I'm worth all this, but you just recognize the fact that you already have within you internally infinite value, because we're infinite beings and we have connection. As long as you maintain that connection to your creator,
right?
Everything can be provided for you. Everything will be taken care of. It's fine. You don't need to be validated externally by stacks of Bitcoin or stacks of gold or whatever. But if you operate from that settled standpoint from within, I think everything else you'll do will be, much more in balance, much more grounded. And you'll see things a little more clearly that way.
Yeah. Hey, we're with you. I think the thoughtful, intentional approach on all this stuff is what are we doing this for, right? We're here for some purpose that may be higher than something we can even understand, but we're here and we're in connection and relationship with these people around us that we've been entrusted to be around and be part of. And if so, how can we serve those other people? A lot of this stuff is inverted from what the world wants. If my first inclination is for the self and for my flesh, dude, you got to fight that thing, because really I should be serving people. That's where gratitude and gratefulness and mercy and patience and peace and all those things come from. The more you try to steal and take, the less you have, right? The more you get a big deal and you win money and whatever else, the more you want the next one. It needs to be bigger, and the dope hit needs to be bigger. In reality, the fulfillment comes from, you have a time in which you can give or serve or do, and they sound corny and people make them sound bad. Just do it, right? You can trust me or not. I don't, whatever, but that's where it is. And for those of us who have done it, we will continue to do so, because once you know it, there's no turning back. There's no way to want for something else, because everything else after that is a counterfeit. There is no difference, right? Having the joy and the laughter and the care with kids or family or within the walls, or having a relationship with someone, there's not a value. And in all these other components of our life, we assign value to in terms of monetary, and that's asinine. It's just there's no knowledge in it. It doesn't even matter. Right. All this stuff is sort of a vapor anyways, right? If we're to think of ourselves as eternal beings, right? Souls, and we are, what are we doing talking and arguing and complaining about things that are temporary and that are rotting and rusting? Yeah. Right. Now, if in reality, like we were talking about, the skills and all that stuff that are, while we're here and we have the cognitive ability to do so, understand that. Just dealing with crypto or S&P or real estate or plumbing, electrical, technical, awesome. Yeah. Understand them for what they are, and what we're designed to do is to help serve others. Then cool, all the rest of the stuff falls into play. The other things, when we're getting into assets and what's the value and what's going to go to the moon and whatever else, it's all inverted. We're thinking of it the wrong way. You talked about risk earlier. So when we got into metals, I thought that there was very little risk in going from cash to gold and silver, because similarly, if I were to buy land with that money, that all has a store of value: the land, the gold, the silver. If I'm going to throw it in the market, store of value is now I'm an unsecured creditor to some company that may or may not ever pay me if they go defunct. And then I'm at a zero. So that's just all risk. It's all gamble. The way in which it's portrayed for, real estate and for gold and silver is that these things are highly volatile. And in reality, what's highly volatile is the value of the dollar, or the value of fiat currency, or the value of some of those things, those are extremely volatile, but it isn't portrayed that way. People aren't educated in that. So, to some people, I look like the biggest crazy person, risk taker in the world. But to me, you're trading for something of value, and it has been historically valuable for every civilization on the planet.
Yeah.
And from a time perspective, these other things, the NFTs and the tech and the whatever, all that stuff has been there and has passed, and these things have endured. And whether I understand it completely or not, I should probably do my utmost, which has been my job in the last few years, to understand the why part of it. I don't need to necessarily, but I want to, because if I can at least understand enough to relate a little bit to any of the generations around me, any of the people around me, maybe those people are going to be spurred on enough to also want to research, talk, converse. Hey, have you thought of, the Kiyosakis, the Catherine Austin Fitzes, the Owen Benjamins of the world, these people who are thinking and have a platform to be able to relay to others. That's huge, where people use a voice and platform to say, hey, here's where I'm at, good, bad, ugly. This is reality. Here's honesty. Also, here's what I found out. You can do it yourself, which, they all highly suggest you do, or, do your own research and then, get back to me. Or you want to debate about it? Okay, fine, I guess. But do the work is predominantly what most people are saying. And I think for those of us, what you're doing now with small biz and family and relationships and kind of doing the hard things, that's what we're supposed to be doing, because that's what what I believe is what we're accountable for while we're here. Is with what we've been given, we're going to be accountable for the work that we do, what we're able to do and serve and provide for other people, hopefully in their benefit eternally, as well as temporarily in the physical here.
Nice.
Yeah.
This has been talking about value. Like this conversation has been extremely valuable. And I just want to point people out to where they can find you. Your Viking Family Foundry on Instagram. Do you guys have a website?
Yeah, we have a website that's being built at the moment, but I think Viking Family Foundry is probably the best way to get a hold of us at the moment with regard to anything. We'll talk real talk. No one ever has to. We've got medals and all that stuff, but there's no push for anyone to ever buy anything. If I can just be helpful, or if the family, we can be helpful to other people in any way, then we're more than happy to do that.
Nice.
It's a huge blessing for us that people would want to sort of take on some of the Viking pieces of metal or sweatshirts or whatever, in that they in a way it's like people want to be part of the family. Yeah. And it was an idea that we had, and what we love about that part is what I ask when we do talk to people more from a granular perspective is I ask people for their own totem. I ask that people, hey, you know what? Create your signet ring. What are you doing for legacy? What are you doing for your family, for your tradition, for whatever? Make that thing. If it's silver or if it's gold or if it's a ring or if it's awesome, make that thing. We want for people to be creating that for their generations. Because it's not an idea that I have. I didn't come up with any of that stuff. But if we understand where people are coming from and what they're doing, then I also want to support. I want to be helpful, homestead, small biz, shoot, if we can benefit from each other in that, we can learn from each other. And there's something that you are doing to sow the seeds for the next generations. Man, I love it. And then we can be accountable to each other. And then, you can call me out for being a ding dong when I'm off the rails and you're like, Jordan, what are you doing, man? Let's go. Here's where we're at.
Jordan, you
These
can't
are the
walk
things that
around
we
in
say.
solid gold Air Jordans.
Yeah. Fair enough. That we talk about those that Gucci Glock over yours.
Those are called Earth Jordans.
Yeah, it's all of that. I'm sure if you walk around, you can single me out for quite a few things here and there for sure.
That's funny. Well, man, this is a great place to probably set her out and land the plane.
Yeah.
Awesome talking to you, man.
Yeah, likewise.
I'll be out in California a couple times, but I think it'd be fun to work out like a meetup with a bunch of people. My partner's in Australia, and I'm going out there for a couple weeks, and then later this year she's coming to the States, and we're going to do like a long road trip all across from like Florida to California. But we're going to end up in LA at some point and spend like a week there. So be super
That's
cool.
awesome. We would love it. We'd love to meet up. You can put your Sears School training to work with some of the California people around whatever, evading traffic or getting out of Trader Joe's or actual use. I would love that, man.
Be on yourself, and then if they grab you, they don't like that.
It's there's so much of that's I think that would just blow people's minds. Which is interesting to think about. I think you think of as a little more normal just having done it, but for some people to say no, there's layers to what it is, and here it's at. So we'd love to meet you, man. It would be awesome.
Cool. Right on, man. Well, it's been an awesome chat. Thanks. Yeah, go check them out. Viking Foundry, and we'll catch you next time, brother.
Hey,
Peace.
Take care.
All right.
Thanks.
That was a good episode. Jordan is, like I said in the beginning, a different kind of banker.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love that conversation so much because, the topics of money and economy and gold and silver, not really my wheelhouse, not the kind of thing I'm normally drawn to. But I love listening to that conversation because personally, I've definitely changed my views on money and the things that hold true value in this world, especially in the last few years. And I love that Jordan really brought it back to that. He kept bringing it back to like the things that hold true value, which really are our gifts to the world, our skills and our expertise and the true value that we bring. And that's really all like money and crypto and gold and silver. Like that's an exchange for, really. Yeah. So I just love that it came back to that and what you brought it back to at the end about, bringing it back to kind of our soul's purpose.
And peeing on yourself.
Yeah, that Isaac will find a way to bring that into any conversation.
Yeah, we hit on all the important subjects here, and what's more natural AF than urine? Urine therapy. That's all right. We kind of make light of prepping a bit, but I think it fits. To me, it fits. It's what really has value. What under the worst of conditions do we put value on? What under, like in America, we have a history of fighting for our freedom and doing a revolution thing, and being able to hold your own economy, to trade with your neighbors, to be self-responsible. Responsibility is an ultimate thing. And I'll say this, learning to function and use firearms is like one of the ultimate ways to learn responsibility, because that is a very dangerous operation to just pull the trigger and that thing flies out at 1,500 feet per second or whatever it is, and you really need to think about what's downline of that. And as a metaphor, the same thing goes with finances. It's very critical to get that right, and value and protection and safety of the family. All of that's tied to this natural world that we live in our environment. Here, food grows abundantly. In some other people's environments, you might have to plan for 4 to 6 months of non-grow season. So a similar thing is prepping to just take care of yourself whenever winter comes, whether that's winter societally, winter seasonally, or let's say your business takes a tank and you have to have some savings in the bank.
And it's really, I think Jordan really reframed that too, is like, is it really prepping, or like really it's just about taking full responsibility, right? And just always being prepared. I think it definitely got a negative connotation in the last few years because people were like hoarding like canned foods and
Toilet
tinned
paper.
foods and toilet paper and just, yeah. But I think that's also why this conversation is so relevant, because I think it definitely in the last 4 years or so, that's really what people that woke up during that time had to look at. Like, what has true value? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's not all the stuff that we're programmed to believe has value. You know, like I know so many people that their life goal is literally to like buy a house, have the luxury car, buy all the, you know, the Gucci and the Louis Vuitton, all these designer. And I've never really been drawn to that, because for me, I'm just like, anyone can have that. Anyone can have, you can like make tons of money and go and anyone can buy that. That doesn't hold true value, but we're so conditioned to believe that things that have a high price tag, that's what's valuable. And it's really, really not. And so I think we saw that over the last few years, lots of people really had to look at what holds true value. And like we said, and like you guys talked about in the episode, is that it's our skills, it's our expertise, it's like our gifts that we have to offer the world. It's the things that help others and help our families and help our children and really like make the world a better place, to put it really simply. Well, guys, definitely check out Jordan at the Viking Family Foundry.
Yep, and we'll post the links in the show notes. Yeah, go support them. Go, if you are in the States, you know, buy some gold and silver and or learn about it from the links on their site.
Such a beautiful family initiative. Like, I love that they started that business with their kids and
Yeah, the kids are
to teach
involved
them.
and-
Yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing. So definitely go and support them. We'll have the links in the show notes. And of course, if you want to support us, you can do that through our business natural art form if you're in need of some natural remedies. And then of course, you can just support us by liking, following, sharing this episode and wherever you watch and listen. And of course, on social media, you can connect with us there. All of those links will also be in the show notes.
Yeah, and if you want to send some silver our way in exchange for any of the products, just shoot us a message on any of our platforms. That's exactly how Jordan and I first started interacting.
Yeah, he's actually being serious, guys. But for me, I'll only take gold.
Yeah. So if you're going to buy in bulk, that's the best way. All right.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Laters on the Menjay.